diseases that can kill you. Now the incidences are low. The EPA says at the levels, at the lowest levels that they say are acceptable, it's like 1 in 100 who have primary body contact with the water. So if 100 of you go swimming, 99 of you will be just fine. Only one of you will get sick and maybe die. So that's no big deal. The problem is we were finding these indicator bacteria at much higher levels than the EPA says those lower rates of sickness take place. The poultry company's lawyers asked the very logical question, why haven't we seen these large outbreaks? We've got 150,000 people a year that use the Illinois River for recreation. 130 some odd thousand of them float, and the remainder are camping and swimming. If we've got 150,000 people a year, that's going to translate to over 1,000 that will get sick. Why aren't we seeing that? Why isn't that showing up in some kind of study? Well, the answer is most people who get that kind of a sickness attribute it not to what they did last weekend, but what they ate last night. You know, if you get sick to your stomach, the first thing you think is you've got food poisoning. Because it's the same symptoms, the same bacteria. And you're going to try to figure out what you had at Eduardo's that may have caused you a problem. Also consider the fact you've got 150,000 people, but it's spread out over the entire summer, and most of it on the weekend. They come from many states, mostly from Oklahoma, but also from Arkansas and Missouri and Kansas. And in Oklahoma, they don't all come from Tahlequah. They come from Tulsa and Muskogee and Oklahoma City, Norman, Chickasha. They go over to float the river. And after they get finished floating, they go back to all of these cities and all of these states, and 1 in 100 of them will get sick and attribute it in all likelihood to what they had for dinner the night before, and not to the fact that they went swimming in the Illinois River the previous weekend. So we can say statistically from the EPA and the standards that they use that it's happening. Whether we can point to a single person or not and categorically prove that they got sick because they went swimming in the river, that's going to be extremely difficult. Just as it was difficult in the tobacco litigation to prove that any person who died of lung cancer died from smoking cigarettes, because you can't trace a cancer. You can't say what caused it. We proved those cases statistically, just as we provided the statistical evidence of what's happening in the Illinois River. We hope that the judge will grant us a temporary, temporary injunction, which is what we asked for on all surface application of poultry waste. Whether he does or not, we're geared for the second part of the trial, the environmental impact, next spring or summer. The phosphorus that goes down annually in that one river basin alone, 1 million acres, Arkansas and Oklahoma, the amount of phosphorus that goes on the land would be equal to the untreated waste of 10.7 million human beings. More than the population of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kansas combined. If you can imagine taking the population of those 3 states and instead of running their waste through a sewage treatment plant, just taking it out and spreading it on the land, that's the amount of phosphorus we're getting annually from the poultry litter. It's caused a very severe economic and environmental problem, and it's one that we're in litigation over, and I trust for future generations that we'll be successful. I don't know, Chelsea, how we're doing on time. I'd like to have an opportunity for some questions if anybody has.
Absolutely.
And let's do that now. Yes?
So, regarding the poultry litter, are there alternative ways of just destroying the litter other than putting it as fertilizer on soil?
Yeah, there are a number of alternatives, and I thank you for the question. One of the alternatives is to treat it, to break it down into nitrogen and phosphorus, to pelletize it, to sell it where it's needed. Another alternative as to the Illinois River Basin would be to transport it to areas that do not have waterways that are used for recreation or municipal drinking purposes. And there would be lots of areas in northwestern Oklahoma that would fit those categories. There are also proposals to take the waste and burn it to produce energy, burn it to produce electricity at a high enough temperature to keep
Then you have a phosphorus cloud.
keep from having a phosphorus cloud. You know, that would be, if we go that route, that would be an absolute requirement that the temperature in the scrubbers be such that we're not solving one environmental problem and creating another one. And also, if it's going to be taken into other areas and spread, we would insist that it be adequately composted before it goes. Composting would kill the bacteria. So at that point in time, all you would have to worry about is the nitrogen and the phosphorus. All of those are there as potentials. The hang-up on all of them is that it would increase the cost, which means it would increase the cost of chicken. Now, in my naivete, I've said, you know, you can spend a nickel a pound or a quarter a bird to do this, put a green sticker on them and say, we're protecting the environment, and charge $1 more, and people will pay for it, and you make a profit off doing the right thing. You know, that's my simplistic thinking. What they tell me back from a business sense is, in the deals that they do, nationally and internationally, a half cent a bird can make the difference between whether they get a sale or not. So one of the problems that we have that's going to be longer term is that if we're successful here, this should be a template for what's done all across the nation, where no company is at a competitive disadvantage for protecting the environment. And I think that's very doable. I said we need to approach Congress. They need to assess, just like the OERB, Oklahoma Energy Resources Board, has an assessment on oil companies and oil wells to do cleanup. They could do that per bird and pay for the transportation, the treatment, and everything else to draw out the nitrogen and the phosphorus that can be very helpful, but in an environmentally sound way where nobody is at a competitive advantage or disadvantage. And it would take Congress to do that. Instead, they went to Congress to try to get legislation passed that said poultry waste not hazardous. You know, just by an act of Congress. Just the same way the Oklahoma legislature declared on hog farms that if it's a permitted facility, that the smell is not a nuisance. Well, you can put that in a statute, but that doesn't make it smell good. Either it's hazardous or it's not. We allege that it is, and passing a law that says it isn't doesn't make it non-hazardous if it's hazardous. And so far they've been unsuccessful in that. Yes?
I understand the applications for nitrogen. Are there any applications for the phosphorus that you would strain out of the manure?
Phosphorus is also helpful to plants, but in much smaller quantities. And one of the problems, you know, I mentioned that nitrogen to phosphorus, and you can buy nitrogen phosphorus mixed commercial fertilizer, but what the plants need are in an 8-to-1 ratio, and what fertilizer the poultry litter has is 1-to-1. It has just as much phosphorus as it has nitrogen, and that's too much. But the phosphorus is still valuable if it's processed out and sold where the phosphorus is needed. It is not needed anywhere. They've been putting it down so long in the Illinois River watershed, and the land is so saturated that there's no phosphorus need for all practical purposes in that 1 million acres. Yes?
I've visited Tahlequah a few times, and I've heard a lot about there's problems with the waste from hog farms too, as far as the Illinois rivers. Is there anything being done about that?
There's a lot of problems with waste from hog farms. and there's some swine production in the Illinois River watershed. But swine production is going to rank pretty low down the priority list. The industry that the poultry companies kept trying to make